Now, I've got a question for you. If you had 24 hours left on this earth, you knew you only had 24 hours left, what would you do with that time? Would you just spend it depressed and crying that your life is about to be over? Would you go to your bucket list and go, okay, what were those things that I wanted to get done? I've got 24 hours to tick them all off. Would you do something that you maybe were previously scared to do? So like, I'm totally afraid of heights. So would I go skydiving or bungee jumping? Because I knew I'm going to die anyway. So, what have I got to lose, Or would you make that phone call or say something that you've been meaning to say for a long time to someone? The other thing that I'd do is I'd buy like a huge cheesecake, like one of those baked cheesecake, and just eat it all myself. And if anyone wants to come, I'd just buy everybody one each, right? Okay, so 24 hours to live isn't a very long time. 24 hours before the cross, Jesus knew that he was going to be dying. So what did he do? Let's have a look at John 13, verse 1. It says, before the Passover celebration, Jesus knew that his hour had come. It wasn't a surprise to him. It had come for him to leave the world and return to his Father. He had loved the disciples during his ministry on earth, and now he loved them to the very end. How beautiful is that verse? Jesus' focus was on others, even to the very end. As humans, we are so self-absorbed, and if we're facing something, we're quite often focused on our wants and needs rather than others. However, Jesus used his final hours to teach his disciples about abundant life. So that night, they were in Jerusalem. And as Cara was saying before, they had their supper together, the Last Supper. They came in for this Passover meal. Jesus washed their feet, which we'll come back to later. They ate dinner together. They sung a hymn. And then he left the room with the disciples to head towards the Mount of Olives, which is where he will end up getting betrayed. So to get to the Mount of Olives from Jerusalem, it's around about a 30-minute walk through the Kidron Valley. Now, the Kidron Valley is like this vast vineyard. Like, there are vines as far as the eye can see. So while they're walking through this vast vineyard, Jesus uses the setting to give his final teaching about understanding spiritual life. We're going to read John 15, verse 1 to 8. Oh, my picture didn't turn out. They're supposed to be vineyards, but anyway, we'll get over that. So imagine that's just vineyards as far as the eye can see. Jesus said, as he's walking amongst them, I am the real vine, and my Father is the farmer. He tends and props up every branch that doesn't bear grapes, and every branch that is grape-bearing, he prunes back so it will bear even more. You are already pruned back by the message I've spoken. Live in me, make your home in me, just as I do in you. In the same way that a branch can't bear grapes by itself, but only being joined to the vine, you can't bear fruit unless you are joined with me. I am the vine. You are the branches. When you are joined with me and I with you, the relation intimate and organic, the harvest is sure to be abundant. Separated, you can't produce a thing. Anyone who separates from me is dead wood, gathered up and thrown in the bonfire. But if you make yourselves at home with me and my words are at home in you, you can be sure that whatever you ask will be listened to and acted upon. This is how my Father shows who he is, when you produce grapes or fruit and you mature as my disciples. Right. So this week, I decided, as an analogy, I would buy a vine, right? I couldn't find a vine, so I bought a chili plant. Now, one of my beautiful friends said to me, "Oh, who kept that alive for you?" I'm not known for keeping plants alive, and if anybody is a plant person, you can say that it's alive. It's not happy about it. But anyway, That's not well, it's sort of the analogy. Right, so I bought this chili plant, right? You can see these branches have beautiful fruit on it, right? But then there was this other branch, and it was sitting up here, and I thought it didn't look very happy because it didn't have any fruit. I was worried that this branch was getting a bit of a fruit complex, right? That it was sort of intimidated by these other branches that had these beautiful fruit on it, and it didn't have any. So I thought, well, instead of it being sitting there being intimidated, looking down at their beautiful fruit, it would be better if it was cut off and separated from the plant so that then it might do better. So what I did is I cut it off and separated it. You know, the first day it actually looked pretty good. You couldn't really tell. So what I did was I took it with me, you know, this beautiful bit of plant, branch, and I spoke words of encouragement and I gave it positive reinforcement like, you can do this, you've got it. You know, I showed it pictures of how, and look at that, Bunnings even had a revival tactics plant, picture. So I was like, come on, we can do this. I showed it how to grow fruit. I showed it what fruit was. I even took it to the supermarket, right? And then I thought, well, maybe it needs to feel what it's like to have fruit on. So I stapled some little faux fruit onto it to make it, you know, feel like, yes, I can do this. I've got it, right? But it didn't do anything. The plant just kept getting worse and worse. So I thought, well, maybe it's lonely because, you know, it's used to being connected. So I actually just put it down there and laid it next to the plant so that it wouldn't be lonely. And it could, you know, it could be sort of near the other branches. And I even put a bit of water on it, you know, because people say that works with plants. But still nothing. It's still withered. And it wasn't producing any fruit, right? The fact is, you all know, the branch is separated, right? It's not connected to the vine or the plant. So it has no capacity for growth or fruit. It withers and dies even after one day of disconnectedness. Living next to the vine isn't enough because it doesn't have the source of life. Now, you might think this is like a really funny analogy, like I'm pretty stupid, right? I'm not good at plant, you know, stuff, but I sort of know that if you chop something off, it will die. However, don't we do that with our life? How often do we think, well, I'm offended with them because they look like they have a better life, so I'm going to separate myself from them. I'm not sure about what Jesus is doing here, so I'm going to just take a step aside and do it my own way because I'm sure I can grow fruit on my own. I can even pretend to have some fruit for a while and maybe that'll work. Our spiritual life works the same as this. Disconnected, we run dry, we wither, and we strive to make fruit for ourselves. When we stay connected, however, there is natural fruit production. There's no need to staple fruit to yourself because it's already growing. There's no striving. All you have to do is just abide and stay connected to the tree. It's pretty easy, hey? So, the product of abiding and staying in relationship is fruit. So I've got a new saying, fruit happens. It's a good thing. We're going to read verse 5 again. But just think about the fruit that is produced in your life. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, and the one we all need, self-control. Right, so verse 5 again says, when you're joined with me and I with you, the relation intimate and organic. The harvest is sure to be abundant. Separated, you can't produce a thing. The life you've always wanted, your best life, is found staying connected and remaining in relationship with Jesus. Jesus goes on to say that the Father is the skilled vine dresser. My Father is the farmer who tends the vine. He cares for the branches connected to me by lifting and propping them up the fruitless branches and pruning every fruitful branch to yield a greater harvest. Now, if you've read the Bible for some time and you know this verse, you'll know that the traditional version says he cuts off every branch that doesn't bear grapes, right? There's actually a better translation for the words that are being used within this verse. The better translation actually says he tends and props up every branch that doesn't bear grapes. Let me explain this to you. So in this verse, Jesus is using two Greek words that rhyme, right? Airo and kathero. So airo has three interpretations, right? The commonly used one that we use is to cut off or take away. But a more accurate description of that word within this context is actually to lift up or to hold. And then kathero means to cleanse or purify. So rather than just cutting off and taking away the non-fruitful branches, the Father tends them. He cleanses and purifies and helps those branches. There's a really, if you think about it, as Jesus is walking along in the vineyards, it's this beautiful illustration of seeing a low-lying branch and him coming and just picking it up, and he says, my Father is the vine dresser. He doesn't leave this branch on the ground where it's not bearing fruit. He lifts it up, he dusts it off, he takes off the dead leaves and he puts it back on the trellis to give it support. You know, lately I've been tending my front garden. So as I said, I'm not a gardener, but if plants can grow on their own, I can do it. All right? So what I've been doing, I've got these beautiful ferns that are growing up at my front door. But lately, the sun's sort of scorched some of the leaves and that. And I don't know if they're called leaves or branches or fronds or... Anyway, you know what I mean, the bits that hang out, right? So some of the ones down the bottom have got a bit dry and breaking off. So, but then there's these beautiful curly ones that are coming out the top, you know, and then eventually they go and furl out and become these beautiful green branches. So what I've been doing, because there's no point the plant giving nurture to these dead bits that are falling off, so we're actually coming in and gardening and cutting off these lower lying branches so that the ones that are unfurling are actually getting that nutrients, right? So this is what the Father does with us. He tends you to promote growth and health. And when he takes off some of those things of your life that aren't bearing fruit or that aren't doing so well, you produce you become a stronger branch and you have finer fruit. I just want to point out that God does not discard you when you're not fruitful. He lifts you up, he holds and supports you and cleanses you. He places you on the trellis, which is those wire things that they have in vineyards, to support your growth, right? To help you with your journey. So he gives you this trellis, right? And it's like these spiritual disciplines and things that you can rely on to create healthy heart habits. In the end, no one cares how healthy your trellis is or how beautiful it looks. What matters is the fruit that it helps produce. So your spiritual trellis or your support structure is what we've been focusing on over the last 6 weeks, right? So the ones we've looked at previously are habits of Bible reading, their prayer life, spending time alone with God and your secret life with God, habit of slowing down, and the habit of solitude. And today we're going to be looking at service. Let me show you why serving is essential to your trellis and your spiritual support system. So first of all, we're going to look at who serves and understanding who serves. All right, so Mark 10 verse 45 says that, "For even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve others and give his life as a ransom for many." Before I go further into this verse, I want to just give you some context about the words, the Son of Man, right? So in these couple of words, this title, Jesus is referencing himself to the vision that Daniel had of him in Daniel 7. So we're going to quickly go there. So 600 years before Jesus, God's people had been rebelling, and God allowed them to be conquered by the Babylonian Empire, right? Then the King Nebuchadnezzar, takes captive a whole heap of people, but in particular there was some young leaders that he decided they were good and strong and they had amazing skills, so he wanted to have them in his household and train them. So Daniel was one of those. And Daniel was one of these guys who has those like prophetic visions, right? So he has this crazy dream in Daniel 7 verse 1 to 14. And he sees this lion that's got bird's wings, and then he sees a bear that's got 3 ribs in its mouth. Then there's this leopard that's got bird's wings and they get broken off and whatever. And then there's this 4th terrifying beast, right, with like 10 horns on him. And then there's like this one little horn that's arrogantly boasting. Does anyone else have weird dreams? It's like, mine are weird, but come on. Did you like eat Macca's at 12 o'clock at night and then go to bed? Like, what is going on with this dream? But, like, it's strange, but it had profound meaning. And basically it was outlining 4 empires during that time that would rise and fall. But after this is the important bit, right? Daniel had a vision of God. So it says, I watched as thrones were being put in place and the Ancient One sat down to judge. His clothing was as white as snow and his hair was white like purest wool, as in white hot fire, not age. He sat on a fiery throne with wheels of blazing fire, and a river of fire was pouring out of his presence. Millions of angels ministered to him, and many millions stood to attend him. So Daniel saw the Ancient of Days. He saw God, the one who had always existed outside time and space, the one who spoke light into existence, who holds the universe in his hands. All dominion, authority, glory, and honor was due to him. But the best description that he could get, like when something happens and you don't quite know what words to use to describe it, Daniel used fire and white, because the only thing that he could explain about the intensity and of God's purity and glory was this unapproachable white fire, the consuming fire. So that's why he uses white. Now, it's important to grasp God's immeasurable majesty to understand what comes next. Daniel says, as my vision continued, I saw someone like a son of man coming on the clouds of heaven. He approached the Ancient One. So he wasn't burnt up. He was able to walk straight through that fire. And he was led into his presence. He was given authority, honor, and sovereignty over all the nations of the world, so that the people of every race and nation and language would obey him. He is eternal. His rule is eternal and will never end. His kingdom will never be destroyed. So a human figure enters the presence of God, the Son of Man. He's fully God and fully man. He's given all the authority of God, all dominion and power. He's coexistent with God outside time and space, and he's co-equal with God. He upholds his word, and he deserves all worship and service. So this guy here is the one that Jesus is claiming to be when he says the Son of Man. It's actually his favourite description about himself, more than the Christ or Messiah. He does call himself the Son of Man a lot. And what he's claiming is, I'm that guy. The guy that Daniel was talking about, that's me. I have all honour, authority, and glory. I uphold the universe with my word. I exist outside time and space. All nations should worship me and serve me. It's interesting that skeptics say Jesus never claimed to be God, but that just shows a complete misunderstanding of this scripture and Jesus calling himself the Son of God. But the fact is that the Jews knew exactly what he was saying, and that's precisely why they killed him. Jesus is very clearly claiming to be God. So back to Mark 10:45, right? Now that we understand that reference, when Jesus calls himself the Son of Man, we know that the disciples are then expecting him to say, the Son of Man has all power and authority, or the Son of Man deserves worship and service, or the Son of Man came to rule and reign. But instead, Jesus says something completely different. He says, for even the Son of Man, with all of his dominion and authority, came not to be served, but to serve others, and to give his life as a ransom for many. Now, this was a shocking statement because that is not what they were expecting to come out of the words that they believed was the Lord. Like, the Son of Man would never come because he's outside time. He would never be bound by time and space. He'd never give up his dominion, glory, and his honour. And he would definitely never come to serve. He alone deserves all worship and service. So Jesus completely flips it on its head. Serving is not just what Jesus does, but who he is. He is a servant and a giver. So it's important we understand who serves, because serving is not something that is despised or a low job. It's a holy role. It's one taken on by the Son of Man, the King of Kings. The Lord of all things serves, and we are called to live like him. So there's 3 truths about service. Truth number 1, you are never more like Jesus than when you give and serve. There's 2 essential activities. If Jesus never did anything else on earth, he would have just served and given his life as a ransom. As followers of Jesus, we walk in his footsteps. We've been called to follow him and imitate him, not just in his activity, but in his identity. We are made in his image, and we have his spirit living in us. He is servant and giver, and we become more like him when we serve. So truth number 2, being served is a prerequisite for serving. So tell me, who did the Son of Man come to serve? Yeah, you, us. In John 13, the night before Jesus was betrayed, he had this final supper, right? Now, the disciples organised everything according to what Jesus had asked them to do. They prepared the food, they prepared the room, but someone forgot to get the servant to wash the feet. Like, come on. Now, do you know why this matters? First of all, they're not rich, so they have to walk everywhere, and they're wearing sandals because it's hot and they need air to breathe in their feet, right? But everybody uses these tracks. So it's dirty, it's dusty, there's, animal poop everywhere. They're sweating down their legs and into their shoes, right? So when you get to someone's house, that needs to be washed off before you come inside, right? It's not just, I take my thongs off and be polite to you. They need someone to wash their feet, because back then, right, you didn't sit down at a table and eat. You laid down, right? So that meant someone's stinky feet were almost near where you were eating. You don't want that. So they used to hire servants to wash off all that grime and the stink, so that then when you're eating, it's actually hygienic and not disgusting. Right? So it was probably the worst job. Nobody wanted to do it. It was seen as a gross job that was probably the lowest of all lows. So we have this awkward, embarrassing moment. It's the Passover meal. Everyone's gathered together and everyone's like, who's going to wash the feet? And I'm like, I'm not doing it, you can. Anyway, there's this awkward silence, okay? Now, let me just tell you, Jesus is fully aware that this has all happened, right? And he's fully prepared. He's not like normal person like me who would just be like, oh, come on, guys, get your act together. You know, there's no eye rolling or blaming. Instead, Jesus shocks them as he just quietly gets up, wraps a towel around his waist, and then kneels to begin serving them. The lowest of all low jobs he happily does. He washes their feet. And when he gets to Peter, Peter objects and he's like, no, you're not going to wash my feet. I know who you are. You are the Son of Man. You have all power and authority. You're not going to serve me. I'm here to serve you. You're my master. You're not going to do that. And Jesus said, no, unless you let me wash your feet, unless you let me serve you, you have no part with me. So Peter says, well, then wash it all. I'm all in. All right? And Jesus is like, nah, the feet are okay, mate. It's all right. All right? So, but once again, Jesus turns everything upside down. This is the gospel of service. Being served is a prerequisite for serving. Now, this is something that I had to learn when I went on the road with Doug. So I met Doug. He was touring with a band that went around and ministered at high schools and to youth and things. And they lived by faith, which basically meant you were reliant on other people to support you financially. Now, I was too proud to ask for help, and I'm just like, I don't want to do that. Anyway, but God wanted to teach me something. He told me, write a letter to ask for support. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. It's better to give than to receive. So I'm not asking. I'm just going to wait and see what happens. And God says, yes, it is better to give than receive. But you need to learn how to receive so that you know how to give. You need to allow yourselves to receive and be served in humility so that you can serve with humility. We give with a humble heart because we know what it is to receive and we understand what a blessing it is to give. If you knew that we were talking about serving today, what might you have expected? The usual guilt trip about volunteering or shame because you're not serving enough, okay? Or that obligation, that feeling, it's just like, oh my goodness, I need to do more or work harder. But this is not what the gospel actually says. We got a slide? It's not shame on you, but it's shame off you. Christianity is not about you serving God first. It's about God having already served you. It's not about you loving God and trying to strive to reach him and be good enough. No, you love because he first loved you. He comes to draw you close. We don't serve to earn God's approval. The Son of Man already served you by giving his life as a ransom. Matthew 10 verse 8 says, freely you have received, freely give. Just receive the grace that he gives. Let him serve you first, and then, same as being connected to the vine, just that service just overflows and naturally comes out of you. For those new to faith, you might have had the wrong idea about Christianity. This might be the first time that you're actually hearing this good news, and it is great news. Let Jesus, the Son of Man, serve you. Say yes to Jesus. We're going to give an opportunity for that later. Place active faith and trust in him, because once you've been served by Jesus, everything changes. So truth number 3, serving will absolutely transform your mind. Serving's not just volunteering, okay? It's not just the obligatory giving of hours or checking off boxes or doing your religious duty. But it's adopting the very nature of a servant, adopting the very nature of Christ. Our key verse that we've been focusing on is Romans 12, verse 1-2. And it says, therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. The world's pattern is that when you have power and authority, that you use it more to get more. You use it to get more. You wield it for your personal gain, to climb the ladder. Generally, people use power to serve themselves. But God's pattern transforms our mind. We give up our selfish ways and adopt the nature of a servant, and we happily serve others. There was a time when we were on the road, we took on young Christian bands and we took them around Australia. Most of them were between the age of 17 to 21, right? And these big guys who were like big rock stars in their backyard, and then we took them all the way across Australia where no one knew them, right? Anyway, I was the tour manager. Doug was doing sound. And this band, there was a band in particular that was just little spoilt brats, right? They just didn't want to do things the way that we needed to have them done. They didn't want to stick to the time schedule. One of them decided to be a vegan before we went on tour because they didn't want to eat bolognese all the time. Like, hello. Anyway, I was trying to manage these people, and it was like herding cats, right? But the one thing I didn't realise, right, and Fee and I were talking about it this week, managing is not leading, right? To manage people is to tell them what to do and stand in authority over them. But a true leader serves. They lead others by lifting them, right? But I got to this point where these people were just driving me nuts, and Doug was at the same point. And so I called our ministry director, right, who was also a Baptist pastor, and I called him in tears. And what I expected him to say was like, well, just get them in line. Or, we'll cancel the tour, no worries. Or, I'll talk with them. And I was like, yes, this is good. But you know what he actually said? Just serve them. And I'm like, I can't. They don't deserve it. Okay, side note. Back to the night before Jesus was betrayed, did you know Jesus washed Judas's feet? Knowing full well within that hour Judas was about to betray him and sentence him to death, he served him. Huge, hey? So, in my weakness, but also my desire to be more like Jesus, I prayed for help. I'm like, God, I can't do this. I put my pride aside and allowed God to show me how to serve these people. Now, nothing really changed on the outside. They stayed who they were, what they did, and everything. But in choosing to serve, God did a work in me. He changed my perspective, and I was released from the oppression that I was feeling. I was no longer a victim of circumstances or other people's actions. As it says in Romans 12:2, I allowed God to transform me into a new person by changing the way that I think. I am a victor, an overcomer. I am a servant, not a slave. I chose to serve not because they are worthy, but because he is worthy. So Romans 12:1 says, in view of God's mercy, offer yourselves as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. So serving others is an act of worship. Serving flows out of a heart of gratitude when we are connected to Jesus. It flows out of us, and it's a joy to serve. This has been such a timely series for me, the life I've always wanted, living like Jesus. Recently, God's been speaking to me about a lot of different things, and it's just lined up perfectly with this series. I've always been one of those people who has struggled with rest. I even told a counsellor, tell me how to do rest and I will do it. So it totally shows how I don't get that thing, right? I really identify with the lady Martha in the Bible, who's just so busy doing everything and being concerned about getting the job done that she doesn't understand why her sister Martha is sitting at Jesus' feet. It's just like, how can you sit there? There's stuff needs to be done. So I've always been like that. But over the last 2 months, God's been doing a work in me, and he's given me 2 scriptures. Can you guess what they are? John 15, 4-5. And then there's Matthew 11, 29-30. Now, this is what God's been speaking to me. And I want you to see if you can hear Jesus' voice in it speaking to you also. These are from the Message translation, just because I like how it says. So God said to me, Kate, live in me. Make your home in me just as I do in you. In the same way that a branch that's like over here can't bear fruit on its own unless it's connected to the vine. You can't bear fruit unless you're joined with me. I am the vine, you are the branches. When you're joined with me and I with you, the relationship organic and intimate, not forced and like routine, the harvest is sure to be abundant. You don't have to work for the harvest, it happens. But separated, you can't produce a thing. Next one. Walk with me, work with me, watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me and you'll learn how to live freely and lightly. I'm learning what it is to abide or remain in him. I'm learning the unforced rhythms of grace. And you know what? Fruit happens. It's like, whoa, these things are just coming out of relationship. I'm not trying to make it happen. You know, I'm not trying to squeeze out some fruit. It sounds bad. But they just naturally, well, that's going to stick in your head now. So now you won't forget that, right? But as I live, fruit just comes as a natural product of being in Jesus. In fact, Jesus says it's guaranteed. Just stay in him. There's freedom and joy in abiding. So serving is an extension of who I am in Jesus. As an accepted child of God, I'm helping my heavenly daddy. I'm becoming more like Jesus. I'm taking on his servant nature. I'm available. I'm free to serve, not obligated. I'm flowing out of the energy and the gifts that God's giving me, not striving. I'm a fruit-bearing branch. Love, joy, peace, patience happens naturally as I live in him. You know, a branch doesn't produce fruit for itself to eat, does it? Right? And fruit that doesn't get eaten, what happens to it? Falls and becomes nothing. I'm made to serve, and the purpose of the fruit is to give to others. Can the band come up? Thanks. So I invite you, remain in the vine. Stay connected in relationship with Jesus, and fruit will come naturally. Don't compare yourselves to other fruit. Now, this dude, if he just stayed connected, fruit would come because it's a natural thing. Separated, you can't produce anything. Don't separate yourself because you feel down or like you're not producing. The Father lifts you up and supports you. His Holy Spirit helps you. Keep serving. Serving is part of the trellis, the part that actually supports your spiritual growth and helps you stay connected. So there's, once again, the 3 truths about service. You'll never be more like Jesus than when you serve. Being served is a prerequisite for serving, and serving transforms your mind. To finish, this is what service isn't. It's not a low job. The Son of Man, in all of his authority, dominion, and glory, came to serve, not to be served. He gave his life for you, and we're called to be like him. It's not earning God's approval. It's not a religious obligation. Service isn't a guilt-driven activity or striving. And it's not about how pretty your trellis is, okay? It's not about having it all together, because clearly I don't. But service is an act of worship. It's a response to being served by Jesus. Service is adopting the nature of a servant, and it breaks the pattern of this world. Service is part of our spiritual support structure, a path to transformation that changes the way that you think. It's the way to live like Jesus, living the life you've always wanted. Don't miss out on what God wants to do. Choose today. It's a choice. Take on the nature of a servant. Work this habit into your life and watch it transform your heart and mind. When you exit today, I encourage you, have a chat with someone about how you serve already or how you might like to serve more. There's so many areas in our church, from, there's cleaning, kids, youth, coffee, sound, whatever, There's so many areas where you can come along and you can be involved. And I just encourage you, come to the next steps area, talk to one of the leaders, and we will help you find an area that's suitable for you to serve in. Step into community through service. So my question is, will you do that? Will you pursue serving the Lord over your own selfish desires? Don't get swept up in the ways of this world or settle for a mediocre, average life. The best life, my best life, has been serving Jesus. It really is living on the edge and just getting everything out of life. It's the greatest freedom I've ever experienced. God wants greater things for you. He wants that full, abundant life for you. For me, serving is a privilege, and I've never enjoyed it more than being here at Expansion Church. I love to serve, and it's a joy to worship God in all that I do and to bless others in the process. I love being part of what God is doing. And as Pastor Jamie says, we don't have to do this, but we get to do this together. So join in with us as a community as we bless our town and as we help other people grow. Now, if you've never really understood what Christianity is about, it's not about you serving God to earn his approval, but it's about what he's already done for you, him serving you by sending Jesus to give his life for you. If you're feeling disconnected from God, you don't have to stay cut off. He's standing ready to graft you back in. If you want to say yes to Jesus today, if you want to step in deeper into the things that he has for you, I encourage you to pray in your heart with me right now.